Hey everyone, Katie and Sergeant Steele here, and today I want to talk to you about one of the coolest new things coming out on the market at SnotGoblin Games' newest terrain set, the last terrain set you'll ever need to buy. So what we're looking at here is my built and painted versions of SnotGoblin Games' new Kickstarter that he's doing for terrain. These are urban ruins, as you can see, painted up in a custom color scheme, different from anything else I already have. I wanted to do that just to showcase this differently from some of the other content creators who've already looked at these pieces of terrain and painted up themselves. So here I've done kind of blues, reds, and tans with a dirty brown burnt umber oil wash on them. What is all here and a little bit out of camera view is a half table worth of terrain. This is a set of urban ruins that you can build that's modular, right? So if we look at the inside of this, you can see that there's all these little pieces that snap on and off. I've actually put mine together really well. I'm gonna leave it together for the review video. But with that, these snap together. So you can build this terrain any way you want to. You can see you have straight pieces and corners, and then you have all the little pieces of walls. You have broken walls, you have small columns, you have tall columns. You have some with windows, some are solid, and this way it gives you a variety of ways that you can build and make this terrain. This is one of the recommended buildings that you can build out of the bundle. And I really like this one because of its big open gap here. It's almost like an artillery shell or something, or a cannon blast from a Titan came through and just knocked out the center of the wall of the building. But there's lots of different variants on this. I also love this one here that they recommend, which is a really long L with a very low kind of wall side over there. As you can see, it's got lots of places to put your models up in the ruins themselves. And you can, once again, you can see the modularity of all this and how easy it is to kind of put together. This is another kind of shorter one that is an L, but at least 5 inches tall, right? With current 10th edition 40K, that's very important. And this one here actually has some of the window spots in it, and also some of the solid sections that are too wide that have broken walls. So there's lots of pieces for this set. And really, when I was building it and putting it together, I thought of it a lot like Legos. It really was, just for my terrain. This is meant to be taken apart, put back together any way that you see fit. I'm likely going to leave mine together the way it is. See, you just take that right out, put it right in. I could switch out this wall piece, switch out this wall piece, right? Put a different one in quickly and easily. And that's what makes this terrain so awesome. Let me show off a couple more of the pieces. So you also have this corner here. It's a small, like just a little corner piece you can put up. We have a corner with no floor tiles. And then we also have a really tall, narrow building here they recommend. I love this one too. I think I photographed this one with some of my Cadians or my Ratlings inside of it, and it was really great. So I'll be inserting some of that B-roll footage that I've done in photos throughout this video, just to showcase all the different things about the terrain. I think it looks really good on the tabletop. I built and painted mine pretty simply too. This came together very quick. So looking at that, what I did was, in case you want to know how I painted it, I'm going to do a quick time lapse of it during this video, is I primed everything a kind of medium gray. And from that medium gray, I actually stippled with sponges on the blues, the tans, and the reds. Then I washed everything in a burnt umber oil paint, thinned it down really well with mineral spirits, just washed it on real thick. And you can kind of see it there pulled up on the floor panels inside of this ruin. Then, once that all dried, I came back, sealed it up with a matte varnish to also make sure I toned everything down. I don't want my terrain to pop out more than my models, right? Terrain should always be somewhat subdued. And then I added in some stippling to kind of add on some highlights. So a little bit of bright red on the floor and a little bit of a cool white, off-white for the walls for the light blue. Now, this terrain is really detailed. There's actually a lot of stuff that I didn't pick out when painting it, and so I do want to make note of that. There are bricks in the walls, there's little skulls, and there's other kinds of little call outs on the inside too. There's almost these implied window panels on the inside, and maybe these appear more metal than they do masonry. And so there's lots of different ways that you can kind of catch those little details when you're painting them up and really make this terrain stand out. I didn't go all out. I wanted to get this done quickly because I was a couple weeks behind schedule due to illness. And so here's the end results of me kind of blitzing through this. But you can see how easily it came together. Now, I painted all this as separate pieces. I did not assemble it until after it was all fully painted and sealed. The terrain works really well for current 10th edition recommended competitive play and the layouts. This will, so a full table of this, which is available in the Kickstarter, will fill out an entire table of Warhammer 40K. It'll do everything for you. I would recommend maybe adding in a couple things just to mix it up, like containers or trees or something, just to make it fun and add some interesting variation to your terrain. But this will fill out everything you need for line of sight blocking and ruins to move through and to be able to shoot in and out of. I also like it because it's not fully line of sight blocking because of the way they do the destroyed walls and the way he does the windows on this. It allows you, if you want to play the rules that are in the 10th edition book and not just the tournament rules. Sometimes people do ground floor always blocks line of sight no matter what. I don't like to play that way. I like to play rules as written in the book for the terrain. I think it's a lot more fun, but I get why they do that in tournaments, especially to balance out shooting armies. But with the way he's designed it, it does allow you to play rules as written for the terrain, and I think it's really wonderful when you get in there and look at it that way. I do have a couple of critiques of the terrain, though, and let me talk about what I'm going to compare this to. I think the pinnacle of terrain was the previous set of City Ruins that Games Workshop did. I thought that was brilliant in terms of versatility for building it, the detail level in it, and just how it looked on the tabletop. I think that's the most amazing terrain we've ever had for Warhammer 40K, and I'm very upset it is no longer being produced except for the small ruined walls as of this video. I think that's one of the biggest letdowns GW's ever made. I get it, models come and go, but that to me was peak terrain. This is an excellent replacement for that, and I think would work really well whether you play competitively, casually, or narratively. This is going to be able to do that for you. So my critiques of this terrain are as follows. One, I think some of the detailing is a little bit odd. Sometimes I don't know if the walls are meant to be metal or if they're meant to be plaster and concrete. You can clearly see the bricks in it, but with the way the details change up, I'm not really quite sure what's going on. And so as a painter, it's where I didn't want to call too many of those details out. I think I should have taken the time to actually paint in the bricks. So that's a critique of the way I've done this myself. Some of the other things, like what are these bands around the walls and so forth? I get it's part of the effectiveness of actually making the terrain work in terms of like being able to assemble, disassemble it and so forth. But just for the details of it, I'm not really quite sure what's happening from time to time. The other thing that I think could have been improved on this is the underside of the floors. There's absolutely no detailing. There's no texture. So in all fairness, most of the time when you photograph your models, you're not going to see up under this. Okay? If you are buying this for competitive play, you probably don't care anyways. You're probably not photographing your models that way. For me as a narrative gamer, though, it's one thing I loved about the Games Workshop terrain was you could see the underside. They did have detail. You could add things to them, lights and little kind of hoses and other bits that you could put in the terrain. In this, it's just the void space underneath for where it was molded and then made. There's another thing about the kind of detail and the texture of this is if you look at, let me pull this one up here. You can see there's these wooden windows. And it doesn't quite make sense because on the other side, they look like they're solid metal. So I really don't know what he wanted them to be. And that is a little bit of a design critique that I have with this. I wish the materials would just be one thing or the other. And I feel like they're trying to be about 2 or 3 things at once. And it just doesn't make sense. Lastly is, in terms of it being the last train set you'll ever need, that can be true. But my critique of that is, because this is meant, and this is really sturdy, by the way. I mean, look at that. It's right. Once you assemble it, it's not coming apart. But the thing is, when you go to take it apart, the pieces are going to rub together and it's going to start taking the paint off. Some of those pieces get exposed on the ends, like this piece here, this piece here. And so if you do take this apart and put it back together a lot, you're going to really chip a lot of the paint off. That's just me as a narrative gamer. I don't want chipped terrain. I like my terrain to be fully painted, look really nice when I'm playing my games. And so with that, it's just really hard to make terrain that can be disassembled and reassembled without that happening. And I think he has done the best he can with what he was trying to accomplish for that. I don't believe this was intended just for narrative players. I think it works for everybody, but mostly it was built to help fill the gap in making terrain that was edition proofed and worked in the current 40K competitive meta. And it does. It does both of those. And for that, he's done a very good job. All right. That's kind of all I have. So really my recommendations are, I do highly recommend this terrain. If you're looking for a set of affordable urban ruins for your Warhammer table or other tabletop war game, this is a great set to get into with. I think whether you do a half table or a full table is up to you. I think both work. If you have other things you can supplement with, like hills and forests and craters, then you can do that and only get a half table. But if you get a whole table, then you're only going to need like a couple smaller other pieces of scattered terrain to really flesh it out and you're done. So this does a really good job of that. Definitely check it out. The Kickstarter's live until March 20th, 2024. And then after that, we'll see if it's available on the market regularly or not. There are some stretch goals, so do subscribe and watch the Kickstarter to see what other things are coming out. And check out everything else that SnotGoblin Gaming is doing. I do highly recommend all the cool stuff that he's trying to do for the community. So, as always, have fun wargaming. And remember, Cadia stands.